Hi there, and welcome to this introductory course on Game Maker Studio 2. The kind of game that we're going to be making for this course is a top-down role-playing game, kind of like Legend of Zelda. So once you've created a new project, you'll see something kind of like this. You have some tools up here, and resources over here. There's lots of different things going on, so I'll just walk you through each thing as we use it. Let's start over here with rooms. So this is over in your resources tabs right here. And by the way, if you accidentally close a tab or lose it, or you just don't have it for whatever reason, then I can just go over here to Windows and look for resources and click that, and here it is. And it's in kind of an awkward position, so I'll just drag it over here, and now it's there. Also, in addition to removing windows, you can also hide them by pressing this little bar, and now it's still present, it's just hidden. Alright, so resources. Click on rooms, and here we have room 0. And I'm just going to go ahead and rename this right now. RM, and I'll call it main. Alright. You don't have to actually rename it, but if you want to, you can do that two different ways. You can right-click on something to rename, or you can, with it selected, you can press F2, and either way you can just type in whatever you want to call it. So to go into the room, I'm going to double-click on it, and now I should see something kind of like this. Now, one thing you may notice is that a new tab over here just showed up with the room. If I click over on this workspace, that takes me back into the workspace view, and then there is tab. Alright, so I'm in my room main, and I have this grid back in front of me. I can move things around by pressing down on the scroll wheel and dragging around, and that will move my view so you can see the whole room. I can also press and hold Control and scroll the mouse wheel, and I can zoom in and zoom out of my room, and go ahead and try that. If I want the room to fill up this whole view here, there's this button right here, Center Fit. I click on that, and that zooms me in so that it fills the view. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I like having a little bit of a border. One other important thing to know about is, well, yes, you can toggle the grid and to make it look a little bit more like it will in the game, or you can also change the grid size. So, for example, if I say this 16 by 16, then my grid gets much smaller. I'm going to change it back, though. Just press Control Z. I'm going to change it back to 32 by 32 for now. Oh, not 32 by 312, 32 by 32, and good. And you can just leave this snap checked for now. All these other things, grid color, alpha, this is just purely cosmetic to make the grid more or less visible. Alright, so that's my grid and moving around, but right now there is nothing in it. So before we can place anything in this room, we need a tile set. Well, there's a couple of things that we're going to be placing in this room. One is tiles to just kind of create a background layer, like a ground and maybe some features along the ground. And then we'll also be placing objects in the room, like the player and enemies and so on. So to start with, let's create a tile set. So let's see, look over in our resources folder, and near the top there are tile sets. There's notice this arrow does not expand because we don't have any tile sets yet. As soon as you created a project, they give you a room right at the beginning, but they did not give you a whole lot else. So open up tile set, and I'm going to, this is by right-clicking, and create tile set. And I have tile set 0. I'm going to rename this and go to TL, and I'm going to call this desert. Just go in lowercase. This is a common naming convention in GameMaker, by the way, is you type in a short little abbreviation for the data type. So this is a tile set, so I'm just calling it TL, then an underscore, and then the name. And if it's multiple words, then you use underscores between each word. Other programming languages use different naming conventions. For whatever reason, this is what GameMaker does. Actually, part of the reason for it is so that if you have, say, a sprite and an object that are the same thing, you'll often want to give them a different name. So putting this little abbreviation at the beginning lets you differentiate between different things. So we have our tile set, and all right, here we go. And this tile set is going to need a sprite, and after we've built this a little bit, you'll see a little more about what this tile set is. So I'm going to create a new sprite. For creating a new sprite, you can import an image if you have one, but I'm just going to create everything from scratch to make it certain that everyone can follow along. From this view, I double click on a sprite, and this brings up a new Sprite 0 window. And I'm going to use this to make like a desert background. So I'm going to take a color that kind of looks like sand. I think that one looks pretty good. And use the fill tool and click, and now I have sand all the way through it. Now you can see up here in sprites, the sprite right here of this plain yellow has appeared. I'm going to also rename this one too. So click on Sprite, F2, SPR, and Desert. Okay. Alright, so now I have a tile set desert and a sprite desert. So let's take a look at this tile set again. And now that it has a sprite, we can see that it's been divided up into a bunch of different parts. So let's expand our view here, center fit. Okay, so a tile set takes a sprite and slices it into pieces. If we want to change how it's sliced, we can go into Tile Set Properties and set the width and height of each tile. Now, since our room was using a grid of 32 by 32, let's just do the same for the tile. So over here, okay, tile width, 32, tile height, 32. Alright, so now we have 4 different tiles. Alternatively, if we want to have more than that, but keep these same width and heights, well, that means we need to increase the size of the sprite. So I'm going to go over my sprite. I just double clicked there in the sprite in the resources, and I'm going to click on size and change this. And now under the scale image, let's go with let's just double it, 128 by 128, and apply. Okay. Now our sprite should be bigger. Now if we look at the tile set and center fit, now we're back to having a larger number of segments, but there's still that 32 by 32 width and height. So next thing I'm going to add here is I'm going to add a little bit of color, a little bit of features to some of these points. So it'll just give a little clearer idea of what's happening with the tile set. So I'll bring up my sprite, and I'm just going to throw a couple of dots on here. Let's just go with like a green little brush or something like that. Okay, so I'll put one there, and now maybe put like a stone over there, and then maybe something else, like a mound of dirt over here. Okay, good enough. Now we can see these little edits in the sprite window, and I'm going to move these dots around so that they fit inside the boxes a little better. So that means moving this brown one to the right and down a little, and this gray one just down. So let's go here, and to move things around, I just take the rectangle select tool and drag a little lasso over it, and let's move it over. Okay, and let's see how does that look on the tile set. Okay, I'm just going to bring it up one more, up one. Okay, there we go. And now we'll refill in all this empty space. I've gone ahead and edited my tile set a little bit so that it's in like that. And now I can show you how tile sets work. And if I go back into my main room, and I'm going to add some of these tiles, this desert background, to my scene, or to my room. So first I'm going to create a new tile layer. I'll say tiles 1 should show up here. And now I need to select tile set to assign this tile layer. Click on no tile set and select this desert tiles. Now one thing that's important in creating or using a tile set is that you don't put anything important in this top left square, because it will just replace it with this little checkerboard thing, and that's what it uses to delete tiles. So if I see, I can select one of these, and then I can create images of that in the scene. If I select this checkerboard one, then I can use that to delete. Now, if I want to fill the room a little bit faster, I can see this pen right there. I can just increase this number, and now my square is much bigger. So I'm going to zoom out a little, and I'll maximize out the size, and just with one click, now I've made the entire room into a desert. I'm going to shrink this back down to 1, and I'll take some of these rocks and put them in various places, mostly just doing this so I have a little bit of a point of reference as I move around. And okay, there we go. So now I have a room with a bunch of stuff in it. So if I play this scene, if I play the game right now by pressing this button, that's the run button that has a little arrow on it, press run, the game compiles, and now I can see my room. And this is the entire room. It should pretty much just match what was in the edit view. I'm going to close that and stop running the game. And let's say I want to change the size of this room. Well, I can do that right down here in the room settings. I have a width and height. So let's say I want to double the width of the room, say just 2048. And now you can see that much more of that black grid has just showed up, which I can then, if I like, cover with some more tiles. Or if I like the way it was, just Control Z, go back there, and it shrank down again. Now I can also change the height by just changing this number here. Let's say I'm gonna go to 1000. So I'll just make the whole thing square, 1024. Okay, and now I have a little bit more space there. I'll cover it with some of those tiles. Oh, and shrink this back down to 1. Put some more stuff in there. Okay. Now if I play this again, you'll see that the size of the window has gotten bigger and is now square shaped, because the entire room is showing up in our view. Well, that's a little big. We don't want to see typically we don't want to see the entire room in a game. We just want to see a segment of it, particularly like if the character's like walking around. So to zero in on a little space within the room, I'm going to set up a camera area. So that can be done again in the properties of room main. And I'll scroll down a little bit and look for a section that says viewports and cameras. I'm going to open that up and click enable viewports. Then there's several different viewports. We only need one because we only have one view in the scene. Open up viewport 0 and tick this visible box. And you will see that a white box shows up around the room. And that's a little bit big, so I'm going to shrink this down, maybe to roughly half of what it is. So I'll say the width is 512 and the height is maybe 350. Okay, and now it's like that. It's still a little big. Let's go with 300 by 200. Okay, now we have a much smaller space. You can experiment with these values and change them however you like. Now, this is starting in the upper right corner. Let's suppose I want to start the view a little closer to the middle. I can put it exactly in the middle by just setting the X position in the camera properties to 300 and the Y position to 200. And now it will show up over here. Not exactly in the middle of the room, but you can adjust the values however you like. So now if I play the game, I should be seeing just this section. So I hit play, and yes, I am zoomed in just to the space where that white box was. So I'm going to close that. Alright, so now that's fine. I have an empty room, nothing's moving around, it's kind of boring. So now it's time to start putting some moving and interactable elements into the scene. And that means creating objects. So I'm going into Resources folder and create a new object by selecting on Objects, right-click, Create Object. And this is going to be the player, so I'll just call it obj for object _ player. hit tab. Alright, there, I got my player object. And this object needs to be visible, so I'm going to create a sprite. Click New Sprite. And let's set its size. 64 by 64 sounds fine. So let's create a new image. And so that you can see that just showed up here. I'm going to rename it right now. Call this SPR player. And we'll be renaming this again later, but for now, I'm just going to create a little image of a player, and if you have some sprites or a sprite sheet already, then I would recommend just using that. But just to not make any assumptions, I'm going to draw this character from scratch. So let me just create some legs, and then make a torso. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. Actually, make the torso a little smaller than that, because we need some more room for the head. Just a little bit more. All right, there we go. So that's legs and torso, and now let's use a circle and create a head on this thing. All right, that's fine. Let's maybe just shrink it down a little. Use the eraser tool. Make the character a bit thinner. Alright. Okay, there we go. And let's just give him a bit of a neck over here. There we go. Alright. And a little bit more. Okay, now let's create a little face on this character. I'll go with use that little small circle right here and create some eyes. Okay, and then lastly, let's shrink that neck down a little and create some space at the top. Move the head down here again with that little lasso tool. Now go select that box, and I'm going to create a nice, give this character a little fez, put on the top of their head, and with a little yellow tassel coming down. Okay, so there is my character. Oh, and they need some arms. There, we got some arms. Okay, and then give them buttons, shirt. Alright, there's my character. My lovely character sprite player. So, I have my sprite, and it's been assigned to an object right here. And so now I can place this player inside of the room. So go in my room view, which I just got here by double clicking on this, make sure that the resources tab is selected, and now I can drag my player onto the room. But it's giving me an error. Well, the reason for that is because I currently have my tile layer selected over here in the room editor, and so when I try to place my player inside of it, it's, GameMaker's thinking that I'm trying to assign an object to a tile layer, and hey, an object isn't a tile, so that doesn't work. So to fix that, I'm going to just select the instances layer, and I can drag the player in, and I see this nice green check mark, and I place the player, but it isn't there. And the reason for that is because if you notice in this layers editor, the tiles is above instances. So at the base we have the background, and that gets drawn first, then instances get drawn on top of that, and then tiles get drawn on top of that. And you can see this by if I make tiles invisible by clicking that. You can see the player is there. You just can't see them because they're covered by the tiles. So easy fix. I select instances and drag this so that it's above tiles. I get that little gray bar, and there, now I can see my player visible. Also with the instances selected, I can drag this player and move them around. So I think I'm going to put them over here. Okay, so now when I play the scene, I'm still in this position over here. And I don't really like this. I want the camera to be focused on the player. Now, I could just move the player up here where the camera is, or I could move the camera, manually over there, but that's a little tedious, and it's not going to work anyway once the player is moving. So I want the camera to automatically follow the player around. Well, the way I can do that is I go back into this Properties Room Main, I scroll down a little bit, and so I'm inside of Viewport 0, by the way. Scroll down a little bit and look for Object Following. And here it says No Object. I click on that and select Object Player. So that's what's following. And now when I press Run, I can see that the player shows up in the room somewhat. They're just kind of down here in the corner. And that's because when the game starts, the viewport moves, but it moves just enough to bring the player in. So we want to create a bit of a border so that the player is kind of at least close to the center of the viewport. And we can do that down here by setting these horizontal and vertical border values. So I'm just going to try 64 by 64 and see what that looks like. And there we go. I'm a little closer to the center, but not quite far enough. Let's double that again. 128 by 128. Okay, better still. Let's just go a little further. I'm going to say, go with 240 on the horizontal and 200 on the vertical. They don't have to match. Alright, there, that's good enough. So my character is kind of towards the middle-ish of the screen. I'm also noticing just now that the image blends in a little too much with the background. So I'll just go into the sprite editor a little bit longer and pick a different color, and there we go. So now we should be able to see their face on the background. Okay, great. So now I have my character in the room, but they're just standing still. They're not really doing anything. That's kind of boring. So I want to add a little bit of movement to this player character. So I'll select the object player because this is where all the action is going to happen. And the basic system for how GameMaker works, how programming in GameMaker works, is you have objects, and objects have events. Events are things that happen during your game. And within each event, you have actions, and that is stuff that the object does when the event occurs. So let's start by adding an event. And so essentially what we want to have happen is when the player presses the right key on the keyboard, then they move right. Press the left key, they move left. Press up, press down, move down. Not pressing any keys, then they don't move. So I'll start with a key pressed, and I'll go with right. And when the key is pressed right, then I want to get them moving in a direction. So let's see, I'll just say move. I have this toolbox right here where you can just search for things, and this involves movement, so let's see what happens if I bring up move. Okay, I got a set direction fixed, set direction variable, lots of other things. Well, this set direction fixed, it set a fixed direction. That sounds good. Okay, cool, and it gives me a bunch of different options, so I'll just select the right one, and let's see what happens. Run the game, and press the right arrow key, and nothing happens. Okay, well that's no good. But actually, what's happening is we've set a direction, but we haven't actually told them to move. Now, to get them to actually move, they need a speed, and the speed is going to, by default, be 0. So yeah, I mean, if they're moving to the right, but at a speed of 0, that's the same as like not having movement at all. So I'm going to just add in here a set speed, and I'm going to set this to, let's say, 5. Okay, so I've set the speed to 5, and they're moving right. And this is all happening inside of the key press right event. Let's see what happens now. And I press right, and they start moving, and they go flying off. And even when I release the key, then they don't stop. So let's have them stop when I lift up the right key. So add an event, key up, and right. So key press right is what happens at the single frame, just once the player presses the right down key. Up is when they lift their finger off of the key. There is also key down, which runs continuously while the key is pressed. So on key up right, I will just set the speed down to 0. And let's see what happens. So I press right, they're moving, I let go, and they stop until they get off the screen. Okay, great. So we have the player is able to move right, and they're able to stop. Now we just need to have the same thing for all of the other directions. So let's add some more events. So we have this working for moving to the right, so let's go for moving to the left. So let's see, I got left key, and actually rather than go through all that stuff, they're all going to be pretty much the same. So I'm just going to click here, on the key press right, and select both of these. So click on one, and then hold shift and click on the bottom, so that has both of them selected. And then I'm going to click copy, and then on my key press left, go into the space. Again, it's using the holding down the scroll wheel to move the windows around. Right click and paste. And now I have these notes in left. I can just untick the right and tick the left, and so now they're going to be going left in a direction speed of 5 when I press the left arrow key. Let's check that that works. So move right, let go, and stop. Move left, let go, and now they keep going because I forgot to include a key up on left. So let's just add an event. Key up, left. Set speed, 0. Good. And I'm not going to bother cutting and pasting for just setting a speed to 0. So, okay, I can move left, and I can move right. Great. Let's repeat this again for the up and down. So, add an event. Key press, up, and actually let's just add all our events in right now. Key press down, and key up, up, key up, down. So that covers everything. So I go into key up. I don't think I've copied anything else, so if I just paste again, that'll bring in the things that I had on right, and I'll just select the down. Wait, no, sorry, this is up, so I want to set the direction up. And on key press down, and let's just paste again, and set it to down. Alright, so now we can just double check. Left goes left, up goes up, right goes right, down goes down. Good. Now the rest, we're just going to set speed on all the others. So, alright, so set speed 0, that's good. Right, it's got it already. Down, set speed to 0. So, play the game. Let's see all 4 directions work. I can go up and let go and I stop, down, let go and I stop, left, let go and I stop, right, let go and I stop. Alright, so this is going a little bit fast. I'd like to slow my character down a little bit. Now, I could just go through and, enter 2 for every single one of these speeds, but that's a little bit annoying because, well, I mean, 4 places, that's manageable, and when they're all right next to each other, but as the program gets bigger and bigger, there's going to be more and more places where the speed is affected, and I don't want to have to change it have to find all those places where speed is being set, and change it in every single one of them every time I want to mess with the character's speed. That's just too tedious and too error prone. So what I would like to have is just have all of these share a single variable, and then I can just set the variable in one place and they will all get that value. That didn't make any sense, don't worry about it because we're just going to implement that right now. So I add a new event and I go with create. Create is what happens when the object is created in the room, and since the object was placed in the room by us, that means as soon as the room or the game is loaded. So I'm back into object player. So in other words, this is going to happen as soon as the game starts. That's a short version. Alright, so I'm going to create a variable, So I'm just from this common assign variable, and if you're not seeing it, just type in var and you'll see variable right there. Actually, for you it might not be in recently used, it might be over here. Okay, fine, assign variable, and I'm going to have this name be walk speed, and I'm going to set this to 2. Feel free to try different values if you like. Now, in this key press left, instead of directly setting it to 5, I'm going to set it to walk speed. And copy this, and do the same thing for all these other directions. So key press up, go up by speed walk speed, set speed to walk speed for right, set walk speed to down. So now each of these are referring to a variable, or using a variable to get the speed, and that variable is being set right here, which I have set it to 2. So now if I run the game, my character is moving considerably slower. And if I decide I think I don't like this very much, and I want to go back to that speed of 5, well, then all I have to do is go into this create and set this to 5, and then I'm going to go back to moving fast again. So this becomes very easy to change your character's speed. Alright, so one more thing that I want to get to next is that you'll notice that the character looks the same, no matter which direction they're going. And yeah, I don't really like that. I want them to, look like they're facing one direction or the other as they move. So for that, I'm going to, let's see, this character kind of looks like they're walking, I'm going to say downwards. So I'm going to change this name here to Sprite Player Walk Down. Okay, and then I'm going to duplicate that script and create one for Sprite Player Walk Up. Okay, and now in this walk up, I'm going to modify the sprite a little bit, and let's see, get rid of those buttons, and also hide the, no, I want to be this color, and actually I forget which one that was, so I'm just going to use this little color picker and click on the face, and now go back to the paintbrush, and now it's going to use a matching color. That's what the color picker does. Alright, and so now I have a walking up sprite. Let's copy this walk down again. See, I'll just use duplicate. And let's create a walk right. And so for this walk right, edit the sprite a little bit by going in there. And let's see, how do I make it look like it's walking right? Well, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, so I just want to take its face and move it over a little bit. And let's get that eyedropper back so that we can fill in this space. Alright, there we go. So now it kind of looks a little like it's walking to the right. Next, duplicate that, and we're going to create a version that's walking left. Now for this version of it, rather than moving its face around and maybe switching that tassel as well, I'm going to just flip the sprite so it's facing the opposite direction. So in this walk left, with the image selected, and I'm in this view, I go up here to this image tab all the way up in this top view bar, click image, and go to mirror, and I guess since this image sprite only has a single frame, it doesn't matter whether I pick selected or all, but I'm just going to go with selected, and there, now I have mirrored it so that it's facing that way. Now we can see over here in the sprites it's getting a little bit cluttered. We have like 4 different entries just for the player walking, and if we start adding like other characters and they all have a bunch of different sprites, this is going to get like massive really quick. So to just provide a little bit of organization, I'm going to go to right click on sprites and add a group. This is essentially just a folder, and I'm going to call this player walk. Now I'm going to click this top sprite here, hold down Shift, click the bottom sprite so all 4 of them are selected, and then drag this into player walk. And now they are all in this little subfolder. So if I click there, now they're all hidden, and if I open it up, then I can look at them individually. Alright, so that's created all the sprites for the player walking in different directions. Now we need to actually use them. So over here, in our key press event, for the left, right, up, and down, we're going to change the sprite that is being displayed for the object. Right now, we just have it set to walk down by default. We're gonna change that. So with key press left selected, well, let's see, which action do I need? Well, it's going to involve sprites, so I'll start typing in SPRITE, and let's see, what do we got? Animation speed, that doesn't sound like it. Oh, set sprite. That sounds very promising. So I'll take the set sprite, drag it into the window, and let's see, I'm going to select sprite, and we got this folder here for the player walk. So I'm going to the left, and let's see, I'll just get sprite player walk left. And there we go. That's it, all we need for left. Do the same thing for key press up. Drag that in, select player, and select the walk up. For right, let's see, SPR, set sprite, and this is to the right, so let's see. No, I don't think that's the right one. Walk right, there we go. And then lastly, for down, set sprite, whoa, not that. Oh yeah, because you don't have to double click on these, it's just single clicks. So then sprite walk down. Okay, now you notice all these have a frame value, and I've just been leaving these as 0. That's because all of these sprites that I've created just have a single frame, so 0 is going to refer to this one. Typically, and we'll probably address this later, is we'll give each of these sprites a little multiple frames, and then loop between them to create animations. So there'd be a separate animation for each sprite for each walking direction. And so this just says which to start at. So you can leave that as 0 for now. Alright, so I've set my sprite in all the different directions. We don't really need to do anything with the sprites on the key ups, so let's save our project and see where we're at. I run the game, and I press the left, and my character changes to that left sprite. Press right, I'm going to the right sprite. Go up, facing that way, down, facing this way. And so now I can move in all my different directions, and I can like dance around and do all kinds of stuff. So one other thing we want to change in these sprites, if you notice this little cursor, this shows its anchor point. So for all these sprites, and this is generally going to be the case for most of your objects, we're going to set this to middle center. Okay. Yeah, you may have noticed before the character wasn't really centered in the room. That's because they were, but their anchor point was all the way up here. And so when this anchor point is down here in the center, then that means the character is going to show up down here, and so it's not centered right. Now that we've moved the center to this location, it's going to look a little bit better. Also, the character doesn't really move much, like it stays locked right into the middle. We can fix that by shrinking down our borders. So let's see, I'll try 32 by 32. Yeah. Run it. Yeah, now we're seeing our borders. 64 by 64. So if you want to have some movement around, but still also follow, then you can set these little borders. Alright, so that is it for today's lesson. We have a scene, a world where you can walk around. Currently you're able to leave, and we'll address that later. There's also currently no collisions right now with anything, which will also change. nor are there any animations. But we have the basics of a walkabout. So this is actually a good time. You can experiment around with creating better looking sprites, better looking tile sets, so you can create more interesting background. But we already have something that's interactable.